Hey, TackleDirect fans, Patrick Sebile again with you back on this video because there's a question today. To shrimp or not to shrimp? Well, these two guys are my natural shrimp from the Hyperlastic brand, and that's a quite unique shrimp. Well, I came in the US first in September, I think, of '92, and for me, one of the key thing was to target the snook, but beside of that, there were other great fish I wanted to target, and I did. And of course, redfish and sea trout were part of my bucket list coming in there. And then I loved so much the place, I came back years after years, and well, to the point I'm a resident now of the state of Florida. Well, the discovery of that inshore fishery was a big thing for me because I did love light tackle, I did love side fishing, and I quickly realized that those soft plastic shrimp were really a key bait, and there were a number of cases where you can try almost every other lure and have no or very few bites, but the plastic shrimp will still bring a bite on. Well, that's why after using shrimp for a number of years, I have the idea maybe 15 years ago that I wanted to have and create my own shrimp that will be more realistic into its motion. And that's why I ended with this. So the Nat Shrimp come in two models, the floating and the sinking, and the one I want to start with is the sinking one, sorry. So basically what you see, which is key as a differentiation to most of our shrimp out there, is this guy have the attachment on the back of the thorax and the hook is in the front. So that means thanks to that, my weight is located right here underneath the belly, and that's where you have the most water resistance. So that means that guy is half ounce, so it casts beautifully. It casts beautifully because the weight itself and because the attachment is here. So it flies in the air like this. So long cast, more accurate. And when it hits the water, because the position of the weight, it has the most resistance, so it don't dive like a piece of lead in the water. And you have actually a beautiful glide. Sometimes you have a spiraling down, and you have the legs, which is a huge part of the attractiveness of this lure. You have the legs moving like in a very realistic way thanks to the material I used. Now, I think most of you, when you see that, you understand what's happening. Every time you twitch the bait, the tail bends back like a real shrimp. So actually when you cast or pitch or flip that lure in the water, it will have that spiral down or glide down. It will land on the floor. Most of the time, not 100%, but probably 80 or 90% of the time, because the material is buoyant, most of the time it lands like this with the hook up. That's great because you can make pause, and sometimes on finicky fish, pause is the key. And then you start to twitch it. Again, every time you twitch, the tail will bend back like a true fleeing shrimp. And that's key. That's really key with this bait. Now, what's quite unique is that when you bring it with the right cadence and speed, kind of like when you walk a topwater walking the dog bait, you can bring that bait to turn upside down like this, going all the way to the top. And now every time you will give that twitch, it will flip like this on the top and make some bubbles like a shrimp that's about to jump out of the water. So turning this bait into a topwater shrimp. Really, so that's super efficient. So cast very well, very accurate, have great action on drop, very lifelike thanks to the legs moving, very lifelike every time you twitch because the tail bends back, and then you can bring it all the way to the top. So that's a lot of things you can do with the sinking Nat Shrimp. Now, it's also absolutely great if you use it, well, guess what, like that. And you know that's a very efficient way to fish inshore, redfish, trout, snook, number of fish just love this. Well, the Nat Shrimp sinking is just also perfect for that kind of use. You know how to use that, like with every soft plastic. You know, jerk a couple of times, the bobber makes big explosion on top, attract the fish around, and when you make a pause, this thing spiral down, have the action, and again, any movement will bring the tail back, you know, and bend like a fleeing one. Now, that is the sinking one. That's absolutely beautiful. But actually, my personal favorite, not all the time, but in a number of situations, is the floating one. The floating one can do much more. So the floating one came just with the body alone, and you have a spare hook in the package. You can use that hook or other hooks, by the way. This is the simplest and very often the most efficient way that you can use this guy. Simply hook put the hook here. Okay, you hook just in the front, right in the middle, and that's plenty enough. With this, that shrimp, the floating Nat shrimp, is actually floating. So it floats. When you have a steady retrieve, you make a very little, very subtle wake on the top. The legs are moving. Every little rod shaking moves the tail also in a very, very efficient way. And when you start to twitch it, it actually dives like 4 to 6 inches, maybe 8 inches. And it don't float too fast, so you can even make pause where it slow floats back and you twitch again. So it's probably one of the most finesse fishing soft plastic bait out there. Super efficient, and it skips beautifully underneath branches or docks. So that's a great way to use this guy. Now, simply change the position of the hook. Hook it right here, right on the back of the thorax. So when you do so, you turn that shrimp into a popping shrimp. So literally, when you cast that guy, it's gonna float sideways, and then every time you make that short jerk, then the shrimp will bend back like this and create some little bubbles and explosion and do really pop like a small popper. So, but a finesse shrimp popper, and that's incredible. Another great way to catch your reds or all kind of inshore species. Now, you can also use them on a jig head or on a bucktail. Same way of rigging them by the nose. Of course, the bucktail add a bit more of life thanks to the hairs right here. Well, the great thing is when you hook them like this, when you cast them and they dive, of course, the floating shrimp, Nat shrimp, will follow the bait until he hits the bottom. When he hits the bottom, usually with the momentum, he goes all the way down and then slowly raise up because it's buoyant enough to do that. And again, you can have here several actions. You can twitch it. You can simply tremble the rod tip, and actually that material is so lifelike. You see that moving like this here in the air, but in fact, when it's in the water, it's really like 5 times more lifelike than that. Just shaking the rod tip, say 200 feet away from that, well, give it life. That's the crazy thing. You can also drag it on the bottom. And when you drag, remember the legs will always work. So drag it on the bottom, create a lot of attention and attraction to reds, fluke, all kind of fish. That's another great way to use this guy. And more finesse bobber will be perfect also. Have a jig head, light jig head with 1/16, 1/8, something like that, and rig your Nat shrimp like this. So many ways to use and rig one of the most efficient soft plastic out there, the Nat shrimp from Hyperlastics.